Yeah, I've been on the simulator since 8, so just got off of about a minute ago. So yeah, spent a lot of time today running Coda, running Atlanta, posting Phoenix. So it was a busy and productive day from that side of things. But yeah, excited to truthfully be back on the East Coast. A little bit easier travel. But yeah, for us, it was nice to kind of finally have just a good, solid overall run this past weekend. Being able to hopefully build on that and continue to build that momentum going into the rest of the regular season. Obviously, our points situation was like 34th going into Phoenix. Now I think we're 21st or something like that. So need to just have more and more of those days and continue to try to climb up. And looking forward to this weekend at Atlanta. I thought our cars there last year drove relatively pretty good in the packs. So hopefully, the Fords were really good at Daytona, and hopefully we can kind of carry that over to Atlanta.
You mentioned there about the top 10 at Phoenix. Obviously, that was a really good day for Stewart-Haas Racing. Kevin was really strong. You mentioned that. In general, though, can you evaluate where are the Fords right now? Because it seems like maybe you guys are just a step behind. Joey Logano was saying at Vegas, it felt like everybody was a little bit behind. Those were obviously high-speed racetracks. So have you thought much outside of Stewart-Haas Racing and just where the Fords are compared to Chevy and Toyota right now?
Yeah, I would say, truthfully, my focus has been more on just our team. I think collectively, on the mile and a half at least, there is some speed that still needs to be found. But for us on the two, intermediate style racetracks, we've been so off even the top Fords that's truthfully been our main focus. And once we get to be that top three, Ford team, then we're focused on, our gap to maybe the other manufacturers. But for right now, at least on the 14 car, we're just trying to get closer to the top Fords. And until we do that, I don't even think we need to worry about the other manufacturers.
And I wanted to ask, going into Atlanta this weekend, NASCAR's supposed to reevaluate, I guess after this weekend, the larger restart zone. I know there was the incident at Fontana everybody was talking about. Overall, in these 4 races so far, have you noticed anything with that larger restart zone? Will you have any feedback for NASCAR if asked?
Yeah, I think, I was all for it going into it. I haven't had the opportunity this year to be in the lead or even on the front row for that sake to really kind of see how much different it is. I know that farther back in the pack, I do feel like we probably have a little bit more stack ups. Before the zone was relatively small, and pretty much everybody knew in a 5 to 10 car length window where guys were going to go. So you would just lag back and you'd have a big run. Where now with the zone much larger, we all still try to anticipate it. And when that front guy doesn't go, that's when the big stack up, kind of starts. So I would be very curious to see what it's like, starting on the front row. I think as the leader, you definitely have more of an advantage the bigger that zone is because, there's just more options for you to go. So I don't know. I'm kind of torn on it. In the back, it probably is a little bit worse just from a stack up standpoint, but I do think up front, it probably gives the leader a little bit more of an advantage. And I feel like if you are the leader, you deserve to have an advantage.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Let's kick it to Bob Pockrass.
Yeah, Chase, I'm curious. You're actually up to 21st in points, I think, after the penalties announced today.
Solid points day for the 14 group.
A couple of weeks ago, you said you almost felt like you were in a must-win situation. So I'm curious if you feel that way now, or do you expect all those guys who kind of fell behind you in points today to win races, and therefore, it's going to still be a little bit of a slog for you to get in a position where potentially you can make the playoffs on points?
Yeah, I would say, I still think it's a must win. I just think that, there's a possibility that we have 16 winners or right at it again. So last year, having 15 winners, I think there's definitely an opportunity for that to present itself again. So from that side of it, I still think it's a must win. I don't think you want to rely on points, especially if even if there's, say 10 winners, that's 6 guys that aren't in on points. You need to be right around 16th in points to even a little higher than that sometimes to lock yourself in. So that's my biggest thing for being in a must win. It's nice being 21st in points versus 34th. That definitely makes you breathe a little bit easier. But at the same time, I just think you're going to still have to win, obviously to guarantee yourself a spot. But those guys had such a big points gap on us before. I don't know what it was, but even with a 100-point penalty, I'm sure they're not too far behind us. So yeah, solid points day for the 14 to move up a couple spots on a Wednesday. But overall, we definitely need to be better. And if we could have just got a better start to our year, if we do like we did at Phoenix last week, consistently week in and week out, then, you don't have to really worry about it as much. But yeah, I still think you're going to have to win just to obviously solidify yourself in the playoffs.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Let's kick it to Deandra.
Thank you for your time, Chase.
Yeah, thanks.
Atlanta is a super speedway, but it's not a super speedway like Daytona or Talladega. Can you give us, from a driver's vantage point, how is Atlanta so different from the other two original speedways? And as a driver, what do you have to do differently there that's unique from Daytona and Talladega?
Yeah, I feel like Atlanta is probably the most mentally draining place we go to now. It's kind of a hybrid. It's obviously a shorter track by an entire mile versus a Daytona or Talladega, but it's the same concept of racing. You're in a pack. With being a mile shorter, things just happen so much faster. Your reaction time has to be better. The runs develop so much faster and quicker. Your spotter has to be able to communicate to you a lot quicker, and your brain has to process things a lot quicker. So I feel like mentally draining wise, last year, both Mondays after the Atlanta race, I was just exhausted and drained from the mental side of things. But from the other side of it, the driving side, it's a little bit of a hybrid in a sense where, yes, we are in a pack, but at a Daytona or Talladega, your car is always going to be easily, be able to run wide open just because of how big the racetrack is and the corners are, so long. Where at Atlanta, balance is certainly an issue. The handling of the car is very important. Hardly anybody can run wide open unless you're in the lead. So balance comes into play. As the longer the run goes on, your car starts slipping and sliding around a lot more. It's just a lot different than a Daytona or Talladega. So that part of it makes it interesting. Because the car is so important, where at a Daytona or Talladega, it's maybe not as important. So that side of it is fun, I think, because you do get a little bit of mix of both styles of racing. But from a mentally draining side, it is extremely exhausting to run, Atlanta, just because your mind is constantly working. Where at Daytona and Talladega, you can kind of get in a little bit of a break or just a little bit relaxed down the straightaways because you kind of know where the runs are going to develop. Where at Atlanta, there's just no time to take a breather even.
Great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks.
Let's go to Devin. You're on the mic.
Hi, Chase. So earlier this week, it was shown off on social media that the entry to pit road for Atlanta Motor Speedway is now in the entrance of turn 3. How do you think that will affect in pit strategy, either during green flag stops or even just going under caution? And have you run any simulation going down the new pit road at Atlanta Motor Speedway?
Yeah, I did today, actually. It's definitely, a long pit road. I would say under green, it's for sure going to change the strategy. If you think about coming down early, as long as you're going to be on pit road now, you could easily find yourself 3 or 4 laps down. So if you come down, one of the first kind of 1 or 2 packs to pit together, and then the caution does come out for whatever reason, you're going to be stuck 4 laps down, and you might be able to wave around for 1, but you're not going to be able to get 3. So there's going to be a lot of strategy in that from a fuel saving side to make sure you can be one of the last guys to pit if we do get to that situation. And then under caution, I really didn't think about it, so you just talked about it or asked about it, and it's definitely going to change a little bit just because normally, if there's a split decision, the spotter can easily call it out and tell you, to stay or come, where, being on the back straightaway, he's not going to really have a very good visual of that. So it's going to kind of be up to the driver. So that'll change a little bit, even from the yellow side of things. So it'll be interesting for sure, having it in turn 3. It's going to make it more challenging and a lot more complexion to it. So it'll be fun to watch.
Thank you, Chase.
Yeah, thanks.
Awesome. Mateus.
Hello. Hi, Chase. My name is Matias Viana from Argentina. My question is, given after the 6 in Phoenix and 21, in the championship standings, are there any performance flaws or structural issues with the number 14 or Stuart Haas?
Yeah, I would say, for us, we just didn't get a great start to the season. We kind of struggled more than I thought we would have. We've had a little bit of bad luck, but more or less just have kind of struggled from an overall speed standpoint. Going to the Clash, we were okay. We weren't great. I think we got wrecked running 6th or 7th, and then go to Daytona was in a good opportunity. I felt like to potentially, have a really good run. I think running 7th or 8th with 15 to go, got caught up in a crash. So you go from running 7th or 8th to now running, finishing 34th. And then Fontana and Vegas, we just didn't have the speed. Our car didn't drive that bad. We were just extremely slow. So it was kind of, a head scratcher moment for us, trying to figure out, what we could do to get more speed in the car. And then obviously going to Phoenix, was able to kind of rebound a little bit and kind of save, that front half of our front quarter of our season, that West Coast swing, is a good chunk of our regular season. So for us to be able to kind of rebound and finish strong before coming back to the East Coast was certainly important for us, and we were able to do that.
Thanks, Chase. Have a good week.
Yep, thank you. You too.
Awesome. Let's kick it back to Nathan.
Yeah, Chase, just to follow up on the pit road for Atlanta on Sunday, does it feel safer peeling off on the entrance into turn 3 now versus where you did before? So, under a green flag run, would it reduce the risk of a potential crash there? Does it feel safer in that regard?
I would say it's probably going to be a little easier to if we do come to pit road under green, it'll probably be a little bit easier to kind of get down and probably not cause a wreck there. If we would have somehow wrecked coming in off of turn 4, the whole field's probably going to be in it. Where on the straightaway, there's a little bit more room to kind of spread out. I think it's going to be easier for the guys to get out of the way. They'll be able to go down to the apron and slow down. So I do think that side of it's going to be better. If for whatever reason, if you're on pit road or, on the apron of 3 and 4 going slow and they wreck on the racetrack, that could be fairly big. If somebody hits you at 170 and you're only rolling 45 miles an hour, but that's part of it, with kind of the layout that it has to be to be able to make it safer for undergreen pit stops. So hopefully we don't run into any of those issues. I think it's kind of going to be a thing where we go and trial it and, it might work, or we might not even see it, if we don't have a green flag pit stop. But I think we had to do probably something just because it was going to be, I think, extremely challenging and difficult if we had to do it off of turn 4. And even not only the slowing down part was going to be challenging, but just the transition from the bank to the flat is really, really hard in these cars. I think that was a lot of the reason for it too.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Bob, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I just was curious, Chase. You had 500 miles here in the spring last year, 400 in the summer, now doing 400 here in the spring. Did you know? So, is there any difference between a 500-mile race there and 400-mile race there with this package?
Yeah, I thought so. I thought that, the race, that 500-mile race to me felt longer than the Coke 600. Like I said, it was extremely mentally draining. I think for sure this race could be 400 miles, if not even shorter. There was really no need for it to be 500 miles, at least from my opinion. I would say the intensity was a little bit higher the second race than the first one. Some of that was just everybody kind of knew what to expect at that point. Guys kind of knew their playoff situation a little bit more, but I don't know if you'll see really any difference now just because we all kind of know what to expect. But I was glad when I saw they went to 400 miles for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Awesome. We'll run it back to Devin.
So on Sunday, temperatures for at Atlanta Motor Speedway are expected to be in the lower 50s, and there's going to be some cloud cover in the mix as well. Chase, how do you think that will affect the racing this weekend?
If it was the old Atlanta, I would say it would probably affect it quite a bit just because you would have had a lot more grip. You probably wouldn't have been slipping and sliding around as much. But with the new style of racing we do there, it's going to make a tiny bit of difference from a grip standpoint, but you're going to have so much grip regardless because of the amount of downforce we go there with, the lack of power, things like that. So I don't think it'll really change it at all. Your car will probably handle a little bit better. You're going to have a little more power because of the cooler temperatures, but outside of that, it's probably going to drive relatively the same, at least I would think, from whether it was 85 degrees there or 50.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.